Okay, part 2 of the shock build on the B44.2 continued. Had a little bit of a video interruption a while ago. My phone ran out of memory, so here we are again. Rear shock shaft. Got a 1.6 piston, that's the bigger hole of the two. Run the smaller one in the front. Just run that baby through there dry. Nothing to it. And I'm running the black marked washers, which was a 1.66 millimeter. And we went over that in part 1, so hopefully you guys will catch that. And this is the way I do my shocks. I like doing it this way, it's less messy. I've done them about every different way, and once in a while I have to do it differently, but this for the most part how I like to do it. It's the way I do it at home, the way I do it at the track if I got time. Either way you got time usually. So you put your washer on with the small end facing the shock body, then your O-ring and your center one, and the end one goes on after the O-ring goes on. Boy, that would have been a mess, huh? Put your O-ring on. This is the dry way of doing it. Pretty clean way of doing it. Then you just put it up there and get it close. Looks like I got a piece of lint or something in there. Don't really want that in there. It ain't gonna hurt nothing, just a little piece of lint, but I still don't want it in there. Okay. So there you have that. It's dry. Getting ready to plunge it in there. I'll take me a pen or something. In this case, I'm using a Sharpie marker, a small Sharpie marker. That holds everything in place for me. You can just spread these out a little bit. I've even done it, just put it in there dry, because these things don't fit tight enough that you got to worry about them scarring up when you put them in there like this. They ain't swollen or anything yet. And these are my rear ones, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little drop of oil in there. Doesn't really matter what oil you use. You can use some green slime if you want. Some guys like using that green slime. I don't use it. I just use a little oil. And I take my shock cap and I just slide her in there. Like so. Oh. You know what? I gotta put an O-ring on there. I about messed up, didn't I? There we go. Put this on there first. You gotta have that to get a good seal. I better go through and put it on all of them before I forget. So there you go, you got that. Just crank her down. You can actually go finger tight with these, don't gotta over tighten them. I still like to be secure that I got it as tight as I can get it. And there you have it. Another rear one. No mess. No fuss. Got to make sure this here's loose. Almost every one of these except, well, out of the 4 of these I put together, I had to pinch 3 of them. They were all pretty tight. And here again, we're just going to snug this up. Get it started. Sometimes they're fun to get started. I'm going to grab a hold of this one with this here. Make it easy on myself maybe. It's almost like it ain't got no threads on the end of it or something. We'll get her going here. There we go. We're just going to snug it up until it bottoms out, or until you feel just enough resistance that you think it's bottomed out. Go a little bit above the threads here. Alright, she bottomed out right about there. And it's not so tight that it's bulging into the eyelet. So there we got that one done. Now, here's how the manual will tell you to do it. When I do it by the manual, I don't use the green slime. It's not provided, so I just don't use it. And they want to tell you to do it this way, and it works just as good. Drop this one in here like that, in an O-ring. Then your center one. In an O-ring. Then put this one in facing up like that. And you tighten this down. Oh, O-ring. Have them O-rings on there. If you don't get those on there, you'll get some leaking for sure. Pull those out of there. And you pop that on there like so. Now, you don't want to tighten this down all the way yet, because you're going to have to run the shaft through there, and you don't want any unnecessary pressure against it. This is the front short shock shaft. You're going to slide it through there like that. Now, as you can see, when you do that, you got oil on the end of it here, which really ain't going to hurt nothing if you clean it off real good. And you just tighten this up. Just take and put your lower shock eyelet on there, like so. These sometimes can be a bugger. Let's get them started. And the same thing, you want to run it until you feel it bottom out. Now, if you just had, if I just had one washer in there, I would be done. I wouldn't have anything to adjust. It would just be done. I would have to calibrate it, you know, for my stroke, but for the most part I would be bottomed out, and I would very little have to do any adjustments. Now, let's get this one here done real quick. We'll do it the same way. We'll put a little bit of oil in here. We'll kind of slick that up in there a little bit. Drop this one here in. Make sure the small end is facing downward, like that. Some guys like to soak their rings and get them swollen a little bit overnight. I don't like doing that. I just like throwing mine in there and letting them swell as I use them. Even if I get a little air till they get swollen a little bit. And the outer part of this right here, you can see that right in here. You're going to get a little bit of, it takes a little time for all that to fill up with oil, so you might get a little bit of air in the beginning till it swells up real good and all that oil gets filled in there real good. And this one here goes in the upward position, just like that. Then we'll take put this on there. I about forgot again. Usually I have those on there already. Just kind of put that on there a little ways. You don't want it all the way tight. That way when you plunge this through there, it's not too tight. You don't got to worry about it tearing your O-ring. See that oil on there? Boy, I hate that. It just makes it messier and probably more likely to lose a shock eyelet too. I've actually seen those things pop off. I don't think it was from the oil though. So here we go again with the shock eyelet. They are tight. Almost makes me think that they're molded for a 440 thread, and this here's a little bit bigger thread. That's okay too, because it makes it tighter. Bottomed out. Well, let's just check and see how close these are real quick. We're going to call that one a 0.815. Let's try this one. 0.802. Some of that could be the way I'm holding this, but it don't look like it. So, that's our next step, is to gauge those. And that's part 2 there, continued. We'll go ahead and get these measured up on the next part. We'll go to part 3 and do that. On these, I went ahead and did the rest of them, but we're going to go ahead and put the O-rings on there. And we're going to put an O-ring in here. So that's going to be coming up. These shocks are, like I say, they are the single most important part of your car. If you don't get your shocks working good, and your oil working good, and your pistons working good, or at least good enough that you like to drive it that way, your car is just not going to work. You get these things too far out of whack, get one O-ring too tight or too loose, boy, you just have oil blowing out the end of them, and it can be a mess. It can be a real bummer. So, we got that ready to go. Let's check out the old. Now see there, this rear one doesn't have any oil in that one. Let's see how it looks on this one. See, no oil in there. Just dry, smooth. Got a little oil on the shaft. This is dry. I tell you, I really like the way I did those rear ones. That's really about the cleanest, easiest way, if you ask me. So, we'll be back here in just a little bit for part 3, and we'll get these shafts all the links right on them.